day. This is Miss Mahlako Chuene, and I will be taking you through lesson planning. The first thing that you would want to do when planning for a lesson, it was to consult your CAPS document and find the section which you want to be presenting your lesson on in the CAPS document. For our example right here, I took an example from page 20 of the CAPS document, which is about data and information management, data representation and storage for grade 10, term 1. Here's a better look of the screenshot of the CAPS document. Whenever you create your lesson plan, you need to include the CAPS document screenshot or a picture to support where you got that information. Now, for the purpose of this lesson, you're going to draft your lesson planning form in the following format. You will need to write the name of the school of your choice. And then from there, you're going to write the name of the subject. In our case, the name of the subject is information technology. And then from there, you're going to select the grade and the classes that you are going to be catering for. In this instance, I wrote grades 10 to 12 because the subject of information technology caters for grades 10 to 12. So you can choose any grade of your choice. And the date, because of the screenshot which I chose, I just wrote term 1 because that is a term 1 topic. And the time allocation for this particular lesson is 1 period, and 1 period is allocated 30 minutes. And then from there, I'm going to write the subject topic. The subject topic is data and information management. From there on, I'm going to go to the subject subtopic, and it is data representation and storage. From there on, I'm going to indicate the type of lesson this is going to be. It can either be a theory lesson, a practical lesson, or a combination of both. In this instance, I say that it is going to be a theory lesson. From there on, I will need to state the page number where I got the topic from. And in this case, it is page 20. Remember, when you write the page number, you also need to attach a copy of that page in your lesson planning form. Now, the time allocation for the whole section, in the CAPS document, you will see that the time allocated for this whole section is 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is given 8 hours. And in terms of the minutes, given that one period is 30 minutes, you can just calculate that and get to 480 minutes for the whole section. And then from there, you would need to state your lesson objectives. What do you want to achieve at the end of the lesson or at the end of the topic? Your lesson objectives need to be measurable. So whatever that you want to achieve needs to be measurable. And to ensure this, you need to make use of Bloom's taxonomy verbs when formulating these objectives. Now, Bloom's taxonomy verbs can be found on the internet. It is not something that you need to stress yourself about. You can just quickly search for Bloom's taxonomy and many different pictures and examples come up. In the Bloom's taxonomy, level 1, we have remember. Level 2 is understand. Level 3 is apply. Level 4 is analyze. Level 5 is evaluate. And lastly, level 6 is create. Now, on the side, I've just shown you an example of the Bloom's taxonomy verbs which you could use. We've got define for the remembering level, and in understanding, you've got classify, define, discuss, explain, and for application, the examples are there. So on the right-hand side, you can see the different examples of verbs you can use. However, you are not only limited to these verbs. There are many verbs that you can use. You can just search on the internet and find other examples of Bloom's taxonomy, which give you the same levels with different examples of verbs. Now, for the lesson of data and information management, I've decided to formulate the lesson objectives based on the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. For level 1, I said at the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to define the term data representation. This is a measurable objective because definition comes from remembering what you have learned. And then for the second level, I said at the end of the lesson, the learners should be able to discuss data storage. So they are going to discuss what data storage is. And for level number 3, I said at the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to explain the reason for data storage, differentiate, explain the reason for data storage. That is level 3. Now for level 4, at the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to differentiate between binary and decimal. These things that I'm saying that the learners should be able to do are based on the content that they're going to be learning in the lesson. Now, because my lesson was not going to have level 5 and 6, I just decided to include level 5 and 6, considering the fact that you also need to be able to formulate objectives for such. For level 5, I said at the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to argue the importance of a database. Level 6, at the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to design a data storage file. Now, because this is an introductory lesson to this new concept, level 5 and 6 were not there. I just created them, but given the time, also time allocation is important. Given the time, they will not be able to get through to level 5 and level 6 objectives. It would be at the end of the topic rather, and not at the end of the lesson because the lesson is too short. Now from there, the next important thing is to pick out the learning and teaching support materials. Choosing the appropriate learning and teaching support materials is important because they help you carry out your lesson objectives. Examples, you could maybe pick our computers because this subject is information technology. You could also pick out PowerPoint presentations, projector, textbook, and many other learning and teaching support materials. So there's a lot more you can just pick out that are going to help you achieve your learning objectives. Now, each lesson has 3 different phases. We have the introduction phase, the development phase, and the consolidation phase. In the introduction phase, you will need to establish your context. Now, how do you do that? You first establish what you're going to be doing in this lesson and review the learner's prior knowledge. Find out what they already know about the topic. And then from there, you're going to go into looking at how you're going to present your lesson. And then from there, in the development stage, based on what the learners already know about the topic, then introduce the new content. Always try to introduce the new content in the development stage because it is usually longer and the learners have more time to grasp the knowledge, and already because they have an idea of what's going on based on you reviewing their prior knowledge. And in the consolidation phase of the lesson, you will need to review the content and assess the achievements. So this is where you now start reflecting, looking at your objectives and the activities that took place during the lesson. So the consolidation phase is not given much time when planning for your lesson. What I would typically say is that for your introduction, you can allocate 5 minutes. For your development stage, you can allocate 20 minutes. And for your consolidation stage, you can allocate 5 minutes, and that is your 30 minutes for the lesson. Now, before you can start teaching and doing everything, you need to identify the teaching strategy or method that you're going to use for each lesson phase. All right. Now, this is important to identify the method for each lesson phase, because each phase is different and each phase has its own outcomes. Now, for instance, in an introduction phase, how would you teach that? You would apply the method of questioning because you would want to identify the learner's prior knowledge. And then from there, in the theory lesson, for the development stage, you can employ the discussion method and discuss what data and information management is in your lesson. And for the consolidation, you can either go back to questioning or use review. There are other examples which are not listed here. You can find everything on the internet and in your textbooks. Given the lesson, the teaching methods, or rather teaching strategies, you now need to look at teaching activities. Yes, I decided that I'm going to use questioning in my introduction, but what is the activity that I'm going to do? How am I going to question the learners? Is it going to be through a circle of questions? Is it going to be a buzz session? Is it going to be a think, pair, and share? So you need to identify a teaching activity that correlates with your teaching method or your teaching strategies. Catering for the teaching activities, you also need to look at learning activities. While you're teaching, what are the learners doing? And what are the learners going to be doing when you're done teaching? Are they going to be focusing on the content? Are they going to focus on interacting? So while you're teaching, is it going to be a discussion? So if for your teaching activity you chose a discussion, then this would be an interactivity focus. So you need to make sure that your teaching strategy, your teaching activities, and learning activities all correlate. Now, there also needs to be assessment activities. Now, assessment activities can be your classwork, homework, project, question and answer, any other type of assessment activity that you can think of needs to be employed. Now, the important thing here is to take note of time. Will the learners be able to finish that activity in the allocated time period? Now, with your lesson phases, they all need to be a build-up. Your introduction needs to be related to your development and your conclusion, because this is one lesson and it should all make sense. Sometimes when you're teaching learners, you'd find that some learners understand the topic more than others do, and they tend to finish the activities faster. And some learners struggle a bit with the topic. So what would you do? You would need to give expanded opportunities for either enrichment and remedial purposes. Now, to enrich the learners, you can provide the learners who finish ahead of time and show an understanding of the content, worksheets that have more higher order questions for them to complete. And then for those who seem to struggle, you can provide them with worksheets with more lower order questions for them to complete, so that they get a better understanding of the lesson and the learners are all catered for. Thank you.